Howdy y'all, and welcome back to I Am a Champion, my series where I talk about all things I love about Olympics and Paralympics. With so many of the team sports in the Paralympics going into their gold medal matches any moment now, I thought I would maybe give you a little crash course in them and what they're all about. So basically, there are 5 main team sports in the Paralympics. And by that, I mean like they involve a ball and a team, and you don't have an individual event within them. So while track and field and swimming and equestrian do have team events within them, they also have individual events as well. So I'm not counting those. I'm counting the ones that are specifically team sport events in the Paralympics. Those 5 main team sport events consists of goal ball, GOALBALL, in case it's hard to hear all the letters in there, blind soccer, wheelchair rugby, wheelchair basketball, and seated volleyball. Goalball is the most different sports of all 5 because it is made specifically for blind athletes. There is no visual version of this, so if you're not visually impaired, you won't have an alternative version of this sport. It is specifically for visually impaired individuals. You have 3 players on either side of the court. The court has a net on either side that goes the whole size of it, and you have each side will also be throwing the ball and receiving the ball. The ball has bells in it so that the players can hear it. And all 3 players on both sides of the court are wearing blacked out goggles that are inspected each time they put them on, and they're not allowed to touch them just in case there could be some way of them seeing something through it, because blindness is a spectrum. So some blind or visually impaired individuals and athletes who are playing on these teams might have a little bit more ability to see things like lights and shadows and things like that than other players. So in order to even out the field, they are all completely having blackout blinders on. Every time one player has a ball on their side, they have 10 seconds to return the ball or try to shoot the ball to the other side of the court. Now, if they don't make it in that time, if they fail to actually get it to the other side of the court within 10 seconds, then they are penalized. You see, at any time they shoot, when not penalized, they're facing all 3 of the competitors from the other side, able to try to block the goal. But when they're penalized, they now have the other team shooting against them, and they only have 1 player in their goal to defend the ball. That's what the penalty is if you don't make the shot in 10 seconds or under 10 seconds. The other reason you would face that kind of penalty is if you fail to bounce the ball once in your side of the court and once in their side of the court before it crosses the goal line. It's a pretty easy thing to explain to a certain degree, but there are lots of little nuances, and it is extremely exciting to watch. I highly recommend it. And if you get a chance to watch a specific match, Iran versus US in the Paralympics this year was super awesome to watch. So the next sport in the blind category is blind soccer. Now, in this specific sport, you have mostly blind athletes. I am giving an asterisk to this because on the field, anyone that is in the main part of the field is wearing the same kind of blockout goggles so that they can't see. However, the goalie is sighted. Now, they might have a slight visual impairment, but they are allowed to see everything that's going on and talk to their players and defend the goal. They have to stay within the net area, but they have sight, whereas everybody who is within the field of play is blind. They also have a guide who is calling where the goal is so that they know where to kick the ball to and who has the ball and all those wonderful things. And their coach can also yell things out. In both goalball and blind soccer, the audience has to be completely silent until a goal is made. And then they can go crazy for a short amount of time. And then they will be told to be absolutely silent so that the blind athletes can hear the ball, because both goalball and blind soccer have bells in their ball. It's pretty cool. I personally like goalball a lot more than blind soccer, but I'm not a fan of soccer, so I'm probably not the best one to ask about that. Now, wheelchair rugby versus wheelchair basketball is very interesting as well. Obviously, you're not going to have some things that regular rugby would have, like lifting up the athletes and some of the intensely violent things that you see in regular rugby, but it is still fairly contact sport. They call it murder ball for a reason. You don't have a net or basket. Sorry, you don't have a net or a basket, actually, to be honest. You're playing it on a court that looks fairly like a basketball court, but it's not. It is its own court. And you are trying to get the ball from one side to a net-like area on the other side. And you have to bounce it within every 10 seconds, but you don't have to continually be bouncing it as much as you do in wheelchair basketball. I mean, that's a very, very loose concept of the difference between the two. I've also noticed that in wheelchair rugby, I think most of these sports, there is a percentage of how much disability and ability is allowed on either team at any given time. There's a score system that is used to make sure that both sides are evenly abled or disabled, so that there's not an advantage per team. And in rugby, the way that they classify this or make sure that all of the judges know what's going on is that in the back of their wheelchair, they actually have their classification number. Their jersey has their player number, but the back of their wheelchair has their classification number. So that at any given time, the judges can make sure that the score, the classification, ability to disability is even at all times, which is pretty neat. Wheelchair basketball, I've noticed that the number that's hanging down behind their wheelchair is their jersey number. I'm not quite sure why you need both, to be honest, but there you go. Wheelchair basketball. If you like basketball, I really think you'd like wheelchair basketball because honestly, I think it's one of the most shot for shot similar, adaptive sport to regular sport that you will see within the whole Paralympics. Because you have the same exact court size. It is the same court that the non-wheelchair players play on. And the height of the basket is the same. You still have the concept of traveling. It's not quite as strict, but it is still a concept within the wheelchair basketball community. So you'll still see a lot of dribbling, you'll see a lot more stealing, and it's really impressively difficult and fun to watch them try to make their shots. They are super athletes, and it's wonderful to watch. And then, of course, we have seated volleyball, which is different than the other four, in my opinion, because it's not specifically for blind athletes, and it's not played in wheelchairs. They are going under their own ambulatory abilities, but they have to stay seated pretty much the whole time. In fact, it is to the degree where you are not allowed to lift your butt off the ground without being penalized, with a few exceptions that I do not understand enough to try to explain in a video. But I will say that today's game, there were a lot of butt lift violations called. And that's probably the last time you're going to hear me talk about a butt lift in a video on YouTube. But it's not what American brains tend to think of outside of the Paralympics. Seated volleyball is awesome. I really love getting to see how they've adapted it so that so many somewhat abled or more abled people that can actually do things under their more ambulatory abilities can play, but they can play still with their disabilities. I don't know how to say that in a better tone because I think the heat is getting to me right now. Yes, I'm wearing this jacket, but it's just because I'm trying to tell which videos are which. Anyhow, I think all of these sports are very fascinating, and they all have their own nuanced differences between the adapted version and the ambulatory version. And it's really fun to see how they've made that work out. And I highly recommend you watching them. Currently, the American teams are doing really well in wheelchair basketball, and we did really well in wheelchair rugby, and we're doing really well in seated volleyball. I'm not giving away the final results in any of those in case anyone actually goes back and watches them. We also did pretty well in goalball. And I don't know how we did in blind soccer because I don't watch too much soccer. All that to say, this is not meant to be a spoiler alert because I don't want to give the results away. It's just really fun to watch. And if you get a chance, I highly recommend any of those 5 team sporting events. Many of them actually are competed even outside of the Paralympics, and you might be able to catch them on Paralympic Games on YouTube and possibly some other channels on YouTube and perhaps some other network channels or cable channels. I'm not entirely sure because I don't have cable. And I don't tend to watch Olympic or Paralympic sports when it's not Paralympic or Olympic season. Fun fact about me. I'm fascinated with them during the season. But in order to stay fascinated, I don't watch the early versions of their sports because I want to see the best at their best. And they are really bringing it in these Paralympics. Thanks for watching. I hope you can go out there and watch some of these games yourself. And if you do, come back and tell me which one is your favorite. Maybe one of your favorite matches that you got to watch. I'd love to hear some positive input about the Paralympic Games that you're having. God bless. Thanks for watching. Ciao for now and bye.